Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Tuesday, August 18th, 2020, and today we're going to be talking about the DNC Day 1. So the Democratic National Convention went off last night, and there were some hits and misses, and I'm going to see whether or not I agree with what Chris Cillizza puts out from CNN, pretty much about what he says is a hit versus a miss. Now, I did read this list before I made this video, and I did disagree with some of his points, so we'll talk about that as we get through it. I watched the entirety of the convention, or at least the first day, and I will be for the next 3 days. So I will be pretty much, I guess you could say, taking notes and focusing on what's happening. I live tweeted during the DNC Night 1 yesterday on Twitter on my LT Elections you can just go ahead and see that right here. It's on my end screen, but we're not at the end yet, but you can see at the bottom left of the screen. That's what my Twitter is, and go ahead and drop it a follow. It has roughly the same followers as my Instagram. But let's take a look at the DNC Day 1. So the most notable takeaway, I would say, is Michelle Obama's keynote speech. She gave a very, very good speech, I would say, and it was very much anti-Trump. I think we took a bit of a step away from Michelle Obama being sort of the first lady, not too dabbling too much into politics, in a sense that she wasn't vehemently attacking Donald Trump in the sense that we saw last night. I mean, she did a very, very heartfelt speech, and I think a lot of Americans are going to resonate with a lot of the things that she said. I mean, the entirety of this campaign, the Democratic Party has been focusing on returning to a sense of normalcy, returning to a sense of compassion and hope. And I think that's something that they try to draw a stark contrast between Donald Trump and compassion and people that truly care about Americans. And that's exactly what we saw throughout the entire evening. Now, that we the people idea was, I think, a good way for the DNC to incorporate so many different types of demographic groups into the DNC and have them all speak at once, whether it was Republican voters or the Bernie Sanders wing of the Democratic Party. There's so many things that the Democratic Party, I think, makes up the Democratic Party. I think makes the Biden coalition. And for some reason, I mean, they did it pretty well, I would say. Now, I understand that for an 18 to 24-year-old, last night could have been viewed cringy. I understand that, but also, this wasn't really meant to sway already Democratic voters. Yes, this is meant to rile them up, and I think Obama did that well. I think Cuomo did that well. I think Sanders did that well. But I think that the DNC, a lot of this is going to be focused on winning over those swing voters. And what may seem cringy can also be seen as compassionate or great to see for someone who's on the fence and wants regular Americans to talk about them. I think a problem with a lot of conventions is that they don't have too many citizens talking at them. I think they usually have standard politicians. And I understand that may be the point. Michelle Obama is a regular, not politician, but very well-known name in the Democratic Party, but she also comes across as someone you know personally. And I think that's what she did very well last night. Definitely communicated a message very effectively, through what she was I guess speaking into the TV screen. I know it seems like very disingenuous seeing someone talk through a TV screen with a somewhat pre-recorded type speech, but I think she did very well last night. Something that even President Trump attacked her for this morning, which is why it worked well for the Democrats. Kristen Urquiza. Okay, so I think this is a very, very good point as well. I mean, her talking about her father who died to COVID-19. I mean, this was very emotional. This is the very grim reality of America at this point, talking about the over 150,000 deaths that we've seen. I think this is a Democratic Party's main talking point for the 2020 election, that COVID-19 could have done way better if Donald Trump was not in office. I mean, looking back at the Chris Murphy tweets that I saw last night that were recirculating during the DNC, about February 5th, I believe was the date. He tweeted that the White House was not going to take COVID-19 seriously. They just went through the briefing, and nobody was going to take it seriously, the Republican Party in general. And I think that's what's really going to hurt the GOP the most this election season, because COVID-19 is not going away anytime soon. We're looking at a very real reality that it's not going to just be 150,000 deaths. It's going to be way more than that. I actually get my COVID-19 results tomorrow, so I will update you guys on that. I got tested on Saturday, so I will find out about that. But, looking at the fact that a lot of Americans have been tested for a global pandemic, been tested for a lot of these things and are dying from it, you're going to blame the incumbent president. And there's a lot that could fall on Donald Trump very negatively. And the Democratic Party isn't necessarily politicizing it as much as they shouldn't be. I mean, they definitely could turn this into an infomercial about coronavirus, but they're having one person tell a story that a lot of Americans are feeling. And I think that's something that will resonate very well with voters, because COVID-19 doesn't just kill Democrats. It doesn't just kill Republicans or independents. I mean, everyone, at least someone, knows someone who's been affected by it. I know I have. I know people that have been affected by COVID-19. My family's been directly affected. So there's a lot of things that are going to be in the back of the heads of a lot of voters when they go to the ballot box. And even if they're Republicans, even if they're independents, they're going to look to Donald Trump and think, is he the reason why this happened to my family? Andrew Cuomo, again, COVID-19, reoccurring issue, but he's a governor. So he holds some type of similar powers to President Trump. Andrew Cuomo has been praised by a lot of people in the media, mainly because of his COVID-19 response. The Republican Party said he's failed. The Democratic Party said he's done well. Overall, Andrew Cuomo's numbers, I don't think they lie. I mean, yes, he has had very, very shaky history that definitely could be, you could attack him for. But I will say that the numbers seem to have been beneficial for Andrew Cuomo. And New York was definitely the center front piece of the media for the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, his name was mentioned so many times that people thought he could possibly be president in 2020. Now, when the former 2020 candidates spoke, I thought this was actually a very effective way to communicate across all of the Democratic Party's lines. I mean, Bernie Sanders spoke later in the evening, and a number of 2020 Democratic candidates, for people that may have been in firm opposition to Joe Biden and still may be not liking him today, but still may vote for him just because they want Donald Trump out. I mean, a vote is a vote. It doesn't matter what it's for. It doesn't matter that 60% of those Biden voters are going against Donald Trump. That doesn't really mean anything. I mean, they're voting regardless, so why would it really matter? The only thing it would matter for is for the midterm elections and maybe the next election. But a lot of those Biden voters that are voting against Donald Trump are still Democrats at heart. But when we see these former 2020 Democratic candidates speaking, I think this was a very good way of just communicating to every single part of the Democratic Party. You know, the fact that we have Andrew Yang speaking later on, and we had Cory Booker speak yesterday, and Beto O'Rourke was on the at the DNC. A lot of things that were personal to these candidates were also going to be personal to the American people. And a lot of people didn't have Biden as their first choice. I mean, he was only 30% of the Democratic primaries voters' first choice. That means 70% of the Democratic primary voters, before everyone dropped out, had another option. I mean, Joe Biden was not really number one. He won by a plurality and wasn't the immediate. I mean, he was the immediate favorite following everyone dropping out, but that's the only time he became the immediate majority favorite. And I know that's very difficult in a very large primary, but I think that's very consolidating for the Democratic Party. Unity is a very big issue for the Democrats, and I think they did very well last night, even with Bernie Sanders. I mean, his speech was very good. I would say that him being able to speak to the American people, I think it did come across as a little bit different from John Kasich's speech. I mean, before in the evening, you had John Kasich talking about how Joe Biden wouldn't go to the left, Bernie Sanders talking about how the Democratic Party already has gone to the left. But I think that, honestly, some Republicans who are on edge are going to think, Joe Biden may not necessarily implement a lot of this Democratic change once in office. And to be honest, he probably won't. I mean, it's very difficult to get a lot of the things that the progressive wing of the Democratic Party wants to pass, just given that there's a number of conservative Democrats on top of Republicans in the Senate and the House of Representatives, that it's going to be very difficult to convince them to vote for progressive policies, including Medicare for all, even if it is in the public interest or Americans truly do want this, as polling data now indicates. I honestly still don't think it's going to get passed, because a lot of these senators still have to go back to their constituents, and while California and Maryland may want Medicare for all, Louisiana may not. So moving on, the national anthem, I think that was good. We don't really need to harp on it too much. I don't really think that I'm going to be talking too much about the performances, even though performances are great at every convention, still not too impactful on voters themselves. So we can move past Representative Gwen Moore. I mean, her speech was pretty good, very energetic, but let's talk about his misses. I don't know why he would consider the John Kasich miss, but we'll talk about Gretchen Whitmer. I mean, Gretchen Whitmer, she was a former VP choice for Vice President Biden. She did come off as a very traditional politician, but then again, she is serving as a governor. I mean, you could say Gretchen Whitmer came off as a traditional politician, or too traditional for the moment, but so did Andrew Cuomo. I mean, Andrew Cuomo just didn't have flags behind him. He was still speaking directly to the American people. And we all know who he was. He's a governor. He's serving from a state that had been hit very hard by COVID-19, and so is Gretchen Whitmer. I honestly think that, okay, maybe you could see that she's a traditional politician, but she's only been in office for 2 years. I honestly didn't see anything too wrong with the Gretchen Whitmer speech. Honestly, COVID-19 is a very reoccurring issue for the Democratic Party, and she's a pretty good speaker. I don't think that's too bad. Speaking of good speakers, I also think Amy Klobuchar had a pretty good speech as well. We're talking about people who are on Biden's VP shortlist. I mean, she was definitely on it at some point in time. So both of those people had pretty good speeches. I don't really think that Gretchen Whitmer was a miss. Now for the roundtables, I do agree that this was a miss. The roundtables really just seemed like it was pre-recorded answers. It seemed like they were reading off a teleprompter. I understand that it's hard to remember stuff, especially after you've been asked this question numerous times, but at the same time, it may come off as disingenuous to the American people. Now, these are regular citizens. These are not politicians. Some of them were politicians. Looking at the roundtables, some people didn't even get to speak. So it did seem a little bit like a panel segment on cable TV. So I will say that's probably something that the DNC did incorrectly. But then again, you're never going to get everything correct at a DNC or an RNC. And the RNC is upcoming sometime soon. So John Kasich, I mean, yes, him standing at a fork in the road, whatever. I think that was a pretty good speech in itself. I mean, that definitely could be swaying some of those potential Republican voters. As he said it, I mean, these are not normal times. We could never imagine that someone who made the keynote address in 1996 of the RNC would be speaking at the 2020 Democratic Convention. It'd be insane. John Kasich, who ran against, Hillary Clinton in 2016, simultaneously while running against his Republican opponents, came up fourth in the Republican primary in terms of delegates and was the last standing Republican against Donald Trump in 2016. Could you see anyone else more anti-Trump? I mean, John Kasich, I would say his speech may have been boring to Democrats, but definitely influential to a lot of those on-the-fence Republican voters that were anti-Trumpers, but just didn't want Hillary Clinton in office. And, him pleading with these voters saying, Joe Biden won't turn your backs on you, I think that's something that Republicans for Biden is going to be focusing on, because a lot of Republicans may still be afraid, still voting for Trump for policy only. And if they get through that, Donald Trump, it's a done deal. So the clapping definitely was a miss as well. We definitely saw some people who missed the cue to clap, or, Zoom lags. We all know how that is. So on national TV, it just seemed a little bit awkward at points in time with awkward silence and then random clapping. But overall, I would say that the DNC night one, while may have been cringy to people our age, probably went off very well for people that are of the older generation. I've talked to a lot of my relatives, Democrats, Republicans alike. They've agreed to watch the DNC if they don't necessarily agree with Joe Biden, but I haven't really heard too many bad things about the DNC, to be completely honest. I would say that Twitter probably is a huge step away from reality, so obviously we're going to see some type of disagreements about the DNC night one, but I would say there was a very, very good feel from Michelle Obama at the end of the evening that really tacked it all together, which made the Democrats seem like not only were they the party of anti-Trump and anti-Trumpisms, I guess whatever he stands for, but also, for gun control, to focus on voter registration, a lot of the things, COVID-19 response, a lot of the things that the Democratic Party has been hitting Trump on day after day after day. They are now trying to turn their party into, not only are they anti-Trump, but they're also standing for something super important. And I think Michelle Obama did that perfectly, and a lot of these other speakers did very well last night. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. I will be live tweeting again night 2 on the Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord link for you to go ahead and join. And then on the screen, there's a video you can watch and then a playlist for my 2020 election videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.